everyone, it's Sharona from Pay Your Weights, and today I'm going to be reviewing Lovecraft Country, Episode 2, Whitey's on the Moon. And you guys, before I get into this recap or my deep dive into tonight's episode, I do want to let you guys know that at 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be doing a live show. I'm going to have some guests on my show. We're going to chat about this week's episode. We're going to do a deep dive into it, talk about some things you may have missed, go into a little bit deeper discussion. It's going to be a great time. Make sure you come to my YouTube channel at 10:30. So watch this video and then go to our video, and then you're going to have yourself a good little time. Okay? Okay. And my friends have gotten on me because they say I never mentioned that I have a Patreon now. I have a Patreon, you guys. So I will leave the link in the description section below if you guys want to check it out. Just check it out. See, friends, now I said it. Now going into tonight's episode. So last week we ended off with this like intense last 20 minutes of the episode where Letty, George, and Tick, they make it out alive by a smidge, okay? They make it out alive. They make it to the mansion, the Braithwaite mansion. And essentially William answers the door as they are covered in blood, just like they didn't been through so much. And he says, "Hey, we've been expecting you." What? Like, we were all confused. So the episode opens up and they are moving on up. We got the little Jefferson thing. George's knees don't hurt no more. I was like, George, weren't your knees just hurt in the last week's episode? And now all of a sudden your knees good enough you could be dancing around? Okay, I guess he was just that excited. But what I find hilarious is that even though Letty and George are having the time of their lives, George got all the books that he could want to read. Letty got all the clothes that mysteriously fit her. That should have been a red flag for her. But they're living their best lives. And then we just cut to Atticus, who just sitting there thinking about all the stuff that happened. I was just like, Tick, you got to enjoy life a little bit. But he was just like, no, this don't make sense. Like, why we happy right now? And then as we see when he meets up with them, I like how he mentions to them, like, what white person you know just said, hey, we were expecting you and didn't want to kick you out of their house. I was like, Tick, right. That should have been another red flag. William himself, even though, hey, William, how you doing, boo? I know you're the enemy, but you can get it too. So we see that he's not amused by the house, and he thinks that they have all of their favorite things, not by coincidence, trying to keep them in the house, make them not want to leave. And so he asks about his father, but William says, hey, like, I don't know nothing else. I'm just Christina's friend. I blow her back out from time to time. That was just my extra added piece. We kind of get that tea a little bit later as Tick is talking to Christina when we finally get to meet her. But he just says, hey, we don't have any phones here because he went into some little thing on how they didn't have no phones installed. That should have been another red flag. How you ain't got no phones installed? Help me to understand. Nobody got a cell phone? Nobody? If they traveling, they going to Boston, obviously somebody got to have a cell phone. I just felt like that didn't make any sense. But he then sees his painting is of Titus Braithwaite. And essentially he sees the ring, which is a ring that we see that Atticus will soon come to wear towards the end of the episode. And they tell the story on by how Titus, he was the leader of the sons of Adam. This was the house that he commissioned to have built, but he died in a fire. He died in a fire, and as a result, they had to build the new house, but no one could really explain how the heck he died in this fire. But we think it has to do with the ceremony that happens towards the end of the episode, and that is how Titus died, because he didn't have the spell right, and they all just perished. Simple as that. But he realizes that Letty and George, they absolutely have no recollection of what happened to them, of the creatures, of how they got to the mansion. They have no memory whatsoever, which weirds Atticus out even more. Even has me weirded out because I'm like, did y'all drink something? Like, how they just wipe your memory? But we find out towards the end of the episode that it is actually a spell that has been cast on both Letty and George, and this is why they have no recollection as to what has happened to them. But as he's trying to explain this to them as they are having brunch out on the patio, and then when Letty rang the bell and she was just like, you know, they don't season their food. I need some salt and pepper. I said, you know what, Letty, if William told y'all got a butler, go ahead and use that butler, boo, and get your seasonings, because there is a war on seasoning, you guys. I don't know how we got to this point, but that war on seasoning is real. But as Atticus is trying to convince both George and Letty of what happened to all of them the night before, George basically tells them, hey, we're being watched, and we see a figure watching outside, watching on the inside of the house, watching them on the patio, who I will think it would be safe to assume that that was William. So they come up with a plan. They decide that they're going to search the town for his father because they're just not giving him the information. He feels as though that they're hiding something. So when they go to find Woody, they see that everything's been fixed, which only makes Atticus look even crazier now because he explains how the window got blown out, how Letty hit the monster with the thing, and then George ended up getting knocked out. So we see that Letty asks George, like, hey, you know, she starts talking about asking how many people did Atticus kill when he went and fought in the Korean War. And then they talk about how people were shell-shocked. And then Atticus is just like, what are you guys talking about? There is nothing wrong with me. They've done something to you. You literally have no memory or recollection as to what has happened. That is something that they have actually done to you. And so we see that they end up running into town and they meet a new character, and we see the town, everyone, it kind of gives you the feel of like an Amish town, like a very dated town. It doesn't feel like it is a current, you know, even for the 50s, you don't feel as though that they're kind of caught up with the times. Oh, you know what, y'all, now that I think about that, that's why they wouldn't have a cell phone, because they were in the 50s. So that was really a dumb statement that I made, but we're gonna go ahead and take it back because I had that revelation. I'm thinking that I'm in 2020, but they're in the 1950s. Sorry, guys. Forgive me. Somebody already probably clowned me in the video, but it's okay. I figured it out. So we meet Ardham, who is very disrespectful, okay? She's very disrespectful. So she has the dogs. The dogs start barking, and then she looking at them like, what are y'all doing here? And then he was like, can you tell the dogs to shut up? And then she was like, or can you keep them tell the dogs on the leash to shut up? And she was like, it doesn't seem like they the ones who need to be on the leash. I said, Ardham, what did you mean by that, ma'am? Say what you mean, okay? Don't talk around it. Be about it. So, I'm sorry, I got a little angry just now. So then she makes a comment when she says that blacks are bad enough, because George mentions the grizzlies that they said, you know, are in the woods attacking people or whatnot. And then she says, oh, the blacks are bad enough. She was, but she claimed like she talked about the bears, but we knew who she was really talking about, Ardham. So then she says they're smart, but they're not that smart. Calls them beasts. Says that they think they too clever to cause mischief, and then they go around being persistent and nosy, basically talking about Atticus, Letty, and George. And then she tells them to go back to the lodge before the sun goes down. So we get this other reference of when the sun goes down, it's not safe for them to be out in the woods. And so they think that Montrose, Atticus' dad, is actually in the tower, even though she took them inside of the tower. We saw the dead pigs and stuff. But they were like, there has to be some type of dungeon or basement where they're keeping Montrose. So they come up with a plan on how they're going to steal one of the cars. They're going to go and find Montrose. They're going to get the heck up out of there. So we see that when they're walking back into the lodge, then George makes a statement, okay? So George makes a statement about something that Atticus's mother told him about her ancestors. And I was just like, George, do tell George, how you know something that she didn't even tell her husband or her son. Haven't make sense. And then even Atticus looking at him like, why do you know that? And I was just like, yes, why do you know that? Why do you have a picture of her in your wallet that we saw in last week's episode? I just need the answers to this, sir, because it seems like you've been creeping and you've been cheating. Okay, I know I can't sing, but it's okay. But it seemed like he been up to something, okay? So before we can even question him the way that he needs to be questioned, the monsters come out. I'm shook. They shook. The monsters looking shook like, what y'all doing here? They didn't say that, but I'm just saying. So essentially, before something can happen to them, Christina pops up on this horse, blows the whistle, the exact whistle that he heard that night, the night before, and then the monsters go away. And then she tells Ardham pop up with her dogs out of nowhere. And then she says, hey, take them back to the lodge. Make sure that they don't leave. And then he's going to, he'll come with me or whatnot. No, she left. But she told them to take them back to their rooms and stuff. So I was just like, Letty, George, do y'all remember now? But as quickly as that entire incident happened, once again, their memory vanished. They had no recollection of what absolutely happened to them. And so, we see that Atticus is taken to see Samuel Braithwaite, who I'm just going to call Fitz. And if you guys haven't watched Scandal, you probably don't know why I'm calling Tony, who plays Samuel, Fitz. But that's what everybody just knows him as at this point in time, even though he's been in 15 million other different movies. But he ends up talking to him, not really talking to him at first. It seems like Samuel was having a bad day, y'all. They like cutting him open. I doubt he has any sedatives or any morphine because he's screaming for dear life as they're taking a piece. I don't know if they took a piece of his liver. What the heck they took a piece of? I'm going to assume that it was his liver because I feel like that's the only thing that you would be able to take out because your liver can regenerate as long as it's healthy. So they take a piece of that out. They sew him back up. Then his daddy basically says to Atticus, "You're darker than I expected." Sir, what? You're darker than I expected? I was just like, okay, I don't know what you mean by that, but it just weirds me out a little bit. So we see that he goes and looks at a painting and he brings up Genesis, and then essentially he asks Christina this question about, he talks about how Adam named every animal, beast, whatever it was, he gave them a name. And then essentially he was letting them know that he put them in their place. And so this is in reference to the sons of Adam. This is one of our first indications that, they look as black people among animals. Also, too, women are put in their place as well. Women are not equal to men, right? Then they went into this whole thing on how they blame the fall of man on Eve once again, which is a very annoying topic for me because everyone tries to put the blame on Eve like it was Eve's fault, like she held a gun to Adam's head and told him to eat of the tree. She didn't tell you to do that, Adam. I just didn't understand, so I was getting annoyed by it. Obviously, Christina was annoyed about it. We kind of see one of the first instances with Christina about how she doesn't necessarily agree with the ideals of the sons of Adam. And notice it's called the sons of Adam, not the daughters of Adam, which we kind of reference once her and Atticus have a more in-depth discussion towards the end of the episode. And so she basically says, she makes a statement as if she doesn't believe this, and this is why we shouldn't take everything in the Bible so literally. And then essentially he basically tells them that he wants him to take him back to his room. He doesn't want to look at the sight of him until the ceremony is about to take place. And so she follows the order. So this is actually one of the interesting parts of the show, right? So I do want to talk about what happens once they actually get everyone back to their room. So we go into these different hallucinations, dream sequences, wizardness, magic, whatever you guys want to call it. And so we'll start with Atticus because I felt so bad for Atticus. Okay, everybody else, George that found his long lost love, and then Letty seemed like she about to get her black backbone blown out, and then Atticus, the only one who's sitting up here, he doing Morse code with George in the episode. He's doing Morse code, so they're communicating with each other, and we see that George writes down wizards. But before he can do this and he's listening to see if he says something else, all of a sudden this girl who looks like the same woman who was in his dream at the beginning of episode 1, she just busts out trying to kill Atticus. They fighting. I'm sitting here like, what just happened right now? Why is she trying to kill this man? I'm assuming this is the same woman that was on the phone that he had called, because when he saw her, he called her name out as if he knew her, but she was just trying to kill him the entire time. I mean, she didn't got cuts on him and stuff like that. I'm just like, wow, what is going on? And so then they fighting back and forth, and then we switch to Letty, who she's trying to find a way to break out of her room, and then we see that someone's about to come in, so she hides. She got a little knife or whatever she was trying to stab him with, but then we see that it's Atticus, right? So I'm like, oh, Atticus got to her. I kind of went out of order with this because we first see Letty first, but so we see that, they're talking, and there's an interesting thing that happens in their conversation, which if anyone watched the live stream when I just did not believe Kay that her mama was a sinner, okay? When she said she wasn't a saint, I missed it, but she goes in a little bit more detail, and she references a Bible scripture that she used to say when she was a child, and Atticus says it, and then it triggers her mind to something that she used to do when she was younger. And so she tells him the story about how her mom would always lie to her and say, hey, I'm about to go to church, and she would leave her there. I'm like, girl, if you finna go to church, then why you leaving your daughter here by yourself? Because every time my mama went to church, I had to go with her. So she was like, obviously she was lying, and every time she would come back home, be some random man on her arm. Don't know who none of these dudes are. And so essentially she tells him that, you know, she would be gone for days at a time. She would always pray this prayer, but there was one time she didn't come home. And she kept praying the prayer, hoping that her mom would reappear, but she never did. And so kind of like her mother abandoned her. And so this is kind of why we get a little glimpse into possibly why Letty did not show up to her mother's funeral, which is the reason that all her siblings are mad at her. So we see that Tick tells her that he will never abandon her. And then essentially they look into each other's eyes and then they kiss. And I should have known something bad was going to happen, because I saw that painting of Adam and Eve and that Adam's little ping was a serpent. And I was just like, that do not look comfortable whatsoever. And so they start kissing and stuff, and then, you know, they like about to get their little groove on, and then we cut to the scene and we realize that Atticus in his room. So I said, Harpo, who is this in the room right now? And so we see that it cuts to George, and we see George is trying to investigate stuff. So we see that earlier in the episode with George, we see that George is kind of inspecting his room. He's kind of going through a couple of things, and then he looks at, this is when he first comes back after they have the encounter with the creatures in the woods. And so he's trying to remember what has happened, but he knows that his memory has left him when he kind of goes to the bookshelf. And so he picks up this book called The House on the Borderlands and Other Novels, which was a book that was written in 1908 by William Hope Hodgson. And essentially this was a book that was later published by Arkham, which, you know, published Lovecraft, H.P. Lovecraft's books. But H.P. Lovecraft was a fan of William. And so this is about, the book is about these guys who find this like abandoned house, and then they find this like journal, and it's about this recluse who took a journal of all the crazy things that were happening in the house. That's all I really need to go into. Just know that this was like a little nod to H.P. Lovecraft. That's all that you really needed to know from it. But when George pulls the books from the bookshelf, he sees that the bookshelf actually is a door. And George's faces the entire episode sent me every single time, because he looked like, what in the heck is this? So he goes into the room, and it's this huge, massive library, right? And then how conveniently is this book about the sons of Adam? It's just laying there on the table, all conveniently, out of all these thousands, hundreds, thousands of books in the library. That is what's waiting for him. So we see that he is about the Ancient Order of the Dawn, and so he picks it up, and then we see him references later in the episode. But before we can get back to any of the other stuff, we see that Dora appears. Okay, so Dora appears in his room before he's about to go back into the bookcase. And essentially, this is when we get our revelation that he was doing a little boom boom with Atticus, his brother Montrose's wife. And so she makes, so they're having this whole discussion, and then she alludes to the fact that they've known each other since they were kids. But then she said, but you can take your children with you. And I said, Dora, do tell, children, plural? Because I only know that he has one child, okay? A girl. So you saying children. So this leads me to believe that Atticus is his son, and which is later confirmed in the episode. And at that point, that's when he realizes that Dora is not real. And so as we see this, we're kind of thrown into what is happening in the hallway, where we know that Samuel has called this meeting with all these other sons of Adam to come to his house. And they're basically watching this spectacle of Letty essentially being raped by Atticus, because when he pulls his pants off, and I said, you know what, let me take the time out. I just want to thank Misha for always finding a way to show me, you know, Atticus's his back muscles, his triceps, his biceps, his abs. Just thank you for these moments. I didn't really like it in that moment because he was trying to rape Letty. But we see when he opens hhis pants, the snake come out. And I'm just like, y'all, this is way too much. We got Atticus killing his little boo thing in the other room. They just sitting here watching, laughing. But then we hear them say, why is Christina here? And so this is another indication on how women are still not respected within the sons of Adam. And so we keep seeing this, how she's trying to be accepted and included for who she is, but they're continuously disregarding her because she is a woman. They don't care that she's Samuel's daughter. She's still just a woman. So after all of this happens, they pop out of the hallway. They look like they just been to hell and back, which they have. And Atticus asks George, who did you see? And he was like, oh, what does it matter? Well, it matters a lot as to who you saw, George. I'm waiting on you to tell the people what's really going on. But I do love how George deflects. That's not the part that I love. But I do love that he tells Atticus and Letitia effing right. Who? Nobody's scared of Letty. Not scared. I like how he pumps them up and tells them, hey, these people will try to make you think that you're crazy, will try to scare you, make you not believe in yourself, all because of who you are, especially being Black. And I love that he gives them that confidence and the reassurance that don't let these white people scare you. And I'm just saying white people because the white people are the bad people in this show. So y'all, please don't take these comments close to heart. So I really love that he said that to them and really helped encourage them. And I know I get on Uncle George a lot, y'all, but I do like Uncle George. I was like, look at him looking out for the future, okay? Look out for the kids, Uncle George. So afterwards, we see William comes in, tells him it's dinner time. You guys have clothes in your closets. He tells Letty that she's not allowed because she's a woman, but she can have dinner on the patio. But, you know, Atticus and George, then they would need to go to the dinner. So at the dinner, we see that they are ushered in, and essentially they sit at the head table. Everybody's looking at them, whispering like, who are these Black people up here at this dinner? So William says something to them. I find it very interesting because he basically tells them just because they don't want you here doesn't mean that you don't deserve to be here, because remember, this is Atticus's birthright. And so we see that they serve Samuel come in doing this whole speech, y'all. Talk about here's a piece of me, which is the piece of the liver that Atticus saw them take out. And I love how he was sitting there and George like he was finna eat it. And he was like, don't eat that. Don't do that. Then George gets into this entire speech and he starts talking about how he's read this book. He talks about the history of the Freemasons and how they try to keep Black people out. And essentially, he tells them that, you know, Atticus, this is his birthright to be here. And so Atticus basically stands up because it's part of the rules. He's a part of this higher class that is above all of the other men in the room. He tells them, y'all got to get the F up out of here. I love the use of the F word. It's just so satisfying to see people use it in this way every single episode. So they stare at him for a moment and then he looking like, what's good? Okay. And then they get their behinds up and they leave. But then Samuel says, hold up, homie. I know you're part of this little bloodline, baby, but don't think I won't hurt you, okay? Because you know I already don't like you because who you are. Your blood is tainted. Talk about because even though he might have Titus's blood, he's still Black at the same time, so the blood has been tainted. But please do not excuse this, okay? And think that I won't come for you. And we see what Samuel meant by that towards the end of the episode. So basically after they meet, they basically go to the tower, they get on this whole mission. Letty, George, and Atticus, they basically go to save Montrose. Then they run into Ardell. She pull a gun on them, talking about, look like my dog's finna eat tonight. And then Letty knocked her little raggedy behind out. Bye, Ardell. Bye-bye. Get on my dang on nerves. And so when they go, they try to find him. He ain't in there. Then when we see Montrose, who's played by Michael Kenneth Williams, we see him, he just dug his own way out. He got out. And then George is like, hey, Montrose, how you doing? And then he's looking like, what are you guys doing here? And then he's like, we're here to save you. And then we see he already starts getting on Atticus, telling him like, how stupid, we ain't talked in 5 years. How stupid can you be to fall for this? Like, because clearly Montrose was the bait to get Atticus there in the first place in order for them to be able to do their ceremony. So as he tells him, George says, don't talk to him like that. He'd be like, I talk to my son however I want to talk to. And I'm just like, if you only knew that wasn't your son. So they're going back, trying to escape. Then all of a sudden they're driving as they cross through the bridge. They literally, as if they ran into a wall. The car just totally crashes, jolts everybody forward. Then we see Samuel and Christina. They get out of the car. Samuel got the gun. He shoots Letty, shoots George. Letty looked like she dead. I don't know what happened to George because then they cut. And then essentially, you know, he gives him this ultimatum like, hey, if you want people to survive, you're going to do this ceremony. Y'all going to chill the heck out and let us do what we got to do. Okay? Okay. So, we see that while this whole preparation for the ceremony is taking place, that George and them have a conversation, right? And so they have a conversation, and he asks him like, hey, why did you stop doing the signs? We used to make these signs all the time for the Negro League baseball players, and just all of a sudden you stopped doing it. And he was like, well, Dad's right hook is the reason why I stopped doing it. And so he makes this comment in which he basically tells him that, he basically says that he didn't know, he tells Montrose there's nothing wrong with loving the way that you do, right? And so then he tells him that he needs to show Tick the love that he knows that he has inside. And then he tells him, don't tell me what to do with my son. I told you, stop telling me that. And he was like, well, he might not be yours. And I was like, oh. But then when Montrose said, hey, we settled this a long time ago, like, what's good? I was like, oh, so you knew. Oh, okay, so you knew. Wow. I'm just trying to figure out what the heck is going on at this point in time. So I want to talk about Christina for a moment, because it's really interesting the conversation that they have and that Atticus and Christina has. You know, she walked in at the right time. They sit up there bathing Atticus, little fine behind with his little back little butt, the back muscle showing, the tricep showing. I just feel so blessed to be in the presence of a body like this. Just, woo, my God. Okay, I'm sorry. I said I wasn't going to objectify him. So, since Atticus agreed to do the ceremony to avoid anyone else having to die, as he's basically getting everything together, they're going through this ceremony, and then this spoken word, where we get the episode's title from, Whitey on, actually, no, I don't want to talk about that. I'm going to talk about Christina and Atticus, because I do want to talk about their conversation, because I think that they have a very, very good one. It's interesting because I like how she tells him that the things that our fathers have done are unforgivable, but whenever they need help, we come running back, and it's pathetic. And then they call it family to make it seem as if it's okay. And they both have these toxic relationships with their fathers. Atticus has this toxic relationship with his father, Montrose, who verbally abused him, physically abused him, and the same with Samuel and Christina, because he doesn't respect her because she was born a woman. And so I find it interesting because he kind of brings up, she brings up how when she's giving him the ring of the sons of Adam, the ring that we see the Titus was wearing in the picture, she talks about how it doesn't matter who your father is, your grandfather, your great father. You know, just because you were born a man, you can still get in this club. And then he was like, and a black man at that, like even a black man is still worth more to your father than you are yourself. And so I think it's very interesting to hold on to that, to really understand what Christina's motivations are as we kind of get deeper into the season and we continue to explore her character. And so she tells them that our destinies are not determined by our fathers or our grandfathers. You have to find your own course and seize it. But I do want to talk about the funny moment with Christina, because this is when I was telling you guys that she had all the funny lines. And when she told Tick, when he was basically like, y'all probably part of KKK, when she said, honey, the KKK is too poor for us to fraternize with them, I said, ma'am, what? You talking about the KKK is too poor to fraternize with y'all? I just said, the shade right there, the shade, honey. Because she was basically trying to say, every white person not out to get you, Tick. And I was like, well, Christina, I will have to respectfully disagree, but that's on me. That's a whole nother discussion for another day. But as we get into the ceremony of what is about to happen, there's an interesting spoken word poem that plays, and it's called Whitey is on the Moon, where we actually get the title of tonight's episode. And so it's a 19 spoken word by Gil Scott Heron, and it's very interesting because this poem actually talks about how Black Americans, or how he was feeling, because white people care more than the marginalized Black people in the communities who needed help, who needed funding, who needed money, who want to be treated equally, who wanted equal health care. That you guys care more about sending people to the moon, putting money into the space program, than actually helping American citizens and helping Black America. And I find it interesting that they play that, you know, above all of this, because, you know, for them finding this secret to immortality, because this is what we're talking about. It's just crazy how people find money to do all of these crazy types of things outside of just actually helping people. So I think I find it very interesting that they choose to play that as the ceremony is happening. And so as we see the portal opens, Atticus looks like he's in pain. He ends up seeing a vision of his great grandmother that they referenced earlier in the episode when George was telling the story about Dora. Dora told him about her ancestor, and she's pregnant. She's staring at him, and essentially she kind of sends the power to him that turns Samuel and everybody else into stone. The house start collapsing. I don't know what the heck is going on. The portal's still open, and then he basically starts following his great grandmother and runs out the house, child. As soon as he runs outside to safety, his great grandmother disappears. Then the whole house collapsed. And I was like, dang, like the whole house collapsed. That was a pretty house. Like, we could have did so many things on that house. Did it need to collapse? But they foreshadowed that at the beginning of the episode when they talked about how Titus was the one who tried to basically do the same thing. And he is the one who failed, where we thought Samuel was going to succeed, but H to the no. The ancestor said, no, Satan, not today. So after that, we see that he runs outside. And during the course of the episode, Letty actually does come back to life. That was one of the promises that they had, and that they were going to heal Uncle George when the ceremony was over. But obviously that never came to be. And so we see that when he runs outside, Letty greets him, hugs him, and we see a look in her face as if someone didn't make it. And when he goes to the car, he realizes that that's Uncle George. And we see that he's already passed. And then this beautiful song by Leon Bridges, River, starts playing. And then the episode, he tells him, I'm so sorry. And then the episode goes off. And that really kind of alludes to when Christina said you shouldn't have brought two. Because they kind of told him, like, come by itself. And then he brought all these people. And it's just like, we gave you specific instructions, sir. But can I talk about something random? What was that little thing that Christina gave birth to? They came and got her to talk about it's time. I was like, oh, look, the cow having a baby. And then I was like, girl, you gonna ruin your silk like that? That nice little shirt, it look expensive. And then the creature thing came out. I said, somebody needs to call Peter. They sitting up here impregnating the cows with the crazy creature things. What are they doing? I was really confused by that. But overall, for me, I think that the episode, it's a weird episode to follow up episode 1 with, because episode 1 is just so fantastic and getting you, it just had all these different elements that are happening. But one of the things that I do appreciate about episode 2 is they kind of establish how women are less than. Black people are still less than white people, but white women are still even lesser than. Like, women are still lesser than. And I think it's a very interesting thing for them to actually kill Uncle George. In the book, Uncle George does not die. Everyone, they get back home just fine. And so I'm kind of confused as to what their reasoning was behind that on killing Uncle George. I'll be interested to see how this kind of plays out for the rest of the season. But I was really sad. I was like, y'all just gonna kill Courtney like that? Like, I know it's Uncle George, but y'all gonna kill Courtney off in episode 2? I didn't know how I necessarily felt about that. But I was just like, wow, like, y'all really just said y'all gonna go for it. Y'all just gonna do whatever the heck that you want to do. But I'm very interested to see if Christina has anything to do with this, to see if she kind of knew what was going to happen before any of this was kind of put into place. Because it seems that she understands things on a deeper level. But because they're men and they don't respect her, they don't listen to her. So I don't know if their own ignorance towards women is what actually led to their ultimate downfall of being turned to stone and then killed in the collapse of the house. But I'm very interested to find out a little bit about Montrose, when Atticus is going to figure out that Uncle George was actually his daddy at the same dang old time. But can we talk about the costumes real quick? Last thing, I swear, that equestrian outfit that Letty had on, Dana Pink, who was in charge of costume design, she did the dang old thing. All of Letty's outfits been popping, okay? Like, past 2 episodes, her outfits are popping, okay? And then she gave me Atticus found behind in a nice little tuxedo suit. You did that, honey. You did that entire thing. I do think that this is a weaker episode than episode 1, but watching it again for a second time, I do feel as though that I enjoyed it more on the second watch after a week transpired than when I actually watched the episodes back to back to back. I think I found it to be a lot weaker when I watched it right after episode 1, but having this week break, I think that I was able to appreciate the episode a little bit more as well. But I would be interested to know what your thoughts are on Lovecraft Country. Episode 2, Whitey's on the Moon. As always, my name is Sharana from Period Waits, and if you like what you saw today, make sure you hit the like button, hit subscribe, share this video with your friends, and make sure you hit that notification bell. And I love you guys 3000, and until I see you again, bye!